You're watching and listening to Conscious Evolution Media, shifting global consciousness at ConsciousEvolutionMedia.com.
Are you in the entertainment industry? If you answered yes and you want to promote yourself, your passion, and profession, check out Creative Independent Artists magazines at CIAArtists.com, endorsed by Kids Talk Foundation worldwide. Today's podcast is brought to you by Kids Talk Foundation, a global nonprofit organization providing youth advocacy, television programming, and training services in the United States, along with comprehensive medical and educational services for the developing world, most recently in Kenya, Africa, where Kids Talk Foundation provides a feeding program, medical care, and educational services to over 1,300 young people each day. Please help our youth and place your donation. Go to www.kidstalk.org.
Welcome to the Mind, Body, and Soul Show on Real Coaching Radio Network. How would you like to attempt to demystify with us the realms of the mind, body, and soul to bring you a more holistic and balanced way of living? Healthier in all realms of the psyche, the spirit, and the body. Here is your host and executive producer, Coach Steve Toth.
Welcome, everybody, to the Mind, Body, and Soul Show on the Conscious Evolution Media Network. I'm your host, Coach Steve Toth, and also the founder of Conscious Evolution Media. And it is my pleasure to introduce our guest for this rainy Denver afternoon. Her name is Joanne White, and she is an international author, a speaker, a certified professional coach, a business consultant, an energy intuitive, a trainer, a seminar leader, and she's also called as the Success Doc. Well, we're going to find out all about this in just a minute, but before we go there, I will ask my traditional question, which has been going on now for 9 years. So if I took away, Joanne, all those titles I just mentioned, and any other title that anybody has ever called you, what would be left? Who is Joanne White? Like, really?
I often ask that of myself. Who am I? I think actually, I'm full of energy. I'm fun-loving. I love life, and I'm somebody who, from a very early age, Steve, has reached out to help people, whether it be children or adults, and so that's kind of been my passion, and that's been what I've been doing for as long as I can remember. I'm also somebody that has meditated since a really young age. I remember being like 9 and 8 years old and finding places to sit and meditate and be quiet in nature, and I never knew what that was, at least not at an early age, but it was something that I knew felt right, and to be in the quiet, to be in the stillness, and to be in nature was something that was so very important to me, and it still is. So who am I? I know something else that I've been writing since as long as I can remember, and one of my worst critics was my sister, because early on I used to write these lyrics for love songs, and she'd say, "Oh my God, are you really going to send those to magazines to be published?" And I thought, well, these sound incredible. All they need to do is be put to music. Well, I've evolved since then, and I don't think I write those kind of love songs. I still write poetry that I don't really show people, but I do write some poetic prose, and so I'm very exuberant. I love life. I love to be connected to my divine source, and I love to feel something that I teach, to feel that the universe is this incredibly interactive, alive place that we can connect to and really feel that the universe is responsive to us and listening and answering. I think it's fantastic.
Yes, it is. I'll second that motion. And as you recall from Shakespeare's Hamlet, to be or not to be?
Mm-hmm.
I think the real question, if we're going to go through evolution of our times, is who am I? Is the real question. In today's challenging times. What do you think?
You know, I agree, and I think that who I am and who am I and who anybody is, as we talked about, that whole evolutionary process, it's something that we have something very deep within us that's core, our core soul aspect of ourselves, our divine nature, and I think that doesn't change, but I think that leads us, that personality, that ego self, leads us forward into expansion and to opening up to new ideas, to new facets, to new aspects of ourselves, and I think it's a never-ending, life-enriching, lifelong process that we take, and if we say yes to that, if we're journeying with that and understanding that there's so much to explore, not only in the external realms but also in the internal realms, then I think that question, who am I, is constantly unfolding. And I think that's the beauty of being alive and the beauty of choosing to be in this human self, particularly at this particular time. You mentioned challenging times, and I think many of us have opted to be here during these challenging times to help shift people, to help move people into their truth, into their divinity, into their spirituality, and into accessing the beauty and the oneness and the connectiveness and the connection of all of us and who we are. And I think that's happening. Sometimes it doesn't look like that, Steve, when you see so many people at war and so many people just not understanding one another and bashing one another and just trying to be one up in terms of power and strength. But it's unfolding. It really is. And I'm very hopeful.
Yes,
I want to
yes,
say
it is.
something else. I want to say
go
something
ahead.
else in terms of you asked, who am I? Something that's been with me no matter what, because we all have faced the dark night of the soul. I know I have several times, and what's always been with me that has helped me through any particular struggle or tragedy or catastrophe is that ability to recognize that there's something more, and that ability to see the light and to see the beautiful side of it even in the darkest moments, so that I always knew, I mean, and I've been in dark moments when I've had illnesses and injuries, even when I was at a young age, but I always knew that somewhere, somehow, I could be able to move, and there was light. It wasn't totally dark. There was this little bit of light that I knew at some point would open up and be more so. And so I think that's part of my nature, that tenacity and that joy, that joyfulness. I teach joy, and I just think that that's something that I'm really very much directed here to do, is to bring joy. Sometimes my clients come in so despondent and so angry with themselves or with other people, and I'm here to help lighten it up and lighten them up, and to see the softer side, the lighter side, the funnier side of ourselves and also of life.
Yeah. So I wonder how you feel about this. It's like I'm experiencing the outer world like when I was a kid and I was playing at the park, and I was in the sandbox, and there was all kinds of toys in the box and all kinds of people, little kids, and I wanted to play with everything and everybody, and I had no fear. So I'm wondering, do you feel that people somehow get hooked on this outer world, so much so that we forget who we really are?
Well, yeah, I think that's true. I think so often and so many times, even from a very young age, I've worked with some parents and kids who come in with memories of past lives and experiences and knowledge that it would be wild to say, how do they know that? Where do they get this information? And oftentimes many of these kids, after a certain age, just sort of shut down, or they forget that they had that information. I worked with one family, and the mother used to remind her 15-year-old daughter that when she was about 9 years old, she used to say that she was seeing angels. And as she got older and had to comply and do things a certain way, whether it was follow the rules in school or whatever it was, or just conform, she lost that ability to see those angels. And she vaguely, I mean, the memory kind of is there, but it's a little bit shoddy. It's like, was it a dream? Was it real? So I think you're right. I think it's true. I think oftentimes we lose track of that. And if we could realize that the outer world can be oftentimes a reflection of our inner world, it doesn't have to be that the outer world always has to change us and make us something less or shift us in some way. We can actually do the reverse. We can make those changes. And I always say, just imagine if we were all on that page, including with joy, because I teach a lot about joy. I have this joy ebook that I wrote that I'm really excited about. And so I say to people, can you imagine if you are all resonating at this state of joy and compassion and passion, and really recognizing that you have the power, you have the ability to make those shifts to the external world. Can you imagine what that would be like? Because we are, that ability, that energy, those positive emotions can really shift other people. They're contagious, and they've done so much research with that to show and to demonstrate that if we're at that level of vibration of joy, or vibration of recognizing the wealth of who we are, or like I keep saying, our divinity, because it's within us, and also we're all part of that wonderful source. If we can do that together, we would be creating the most incredible miracles. Our external world would just be amazing, I think.
So what are the requirements, Joanne, for us humans to be able to evolve to do that?
There's that word, right? Requirement. Oh, no.
What's required?
It sounds like rules, Steve.
What has to be so?
I know what's required. Well, I think we have to recognize that, firstly, we have to recognize that we're all connected. We have to recognize that what I do, on some level, even if I don't see it, influences you and vice versa. And many people don't get that.
Are you connected to me right now? Are you connected to me right now?
Definitely am. You connected to me?
How do you know?
How do I know? Well, I can feel it, and I also know it as the truth within me.
Where do you feel it?
I also think that people doubt and distrust or mistrust their inner abilities. I teach courses at a community college, alternative classes in accessing your psychic abilities and accessing your inner power. And oftentimes these people that come in that have not had that for the first time, they know they've had so many what I'll call psychic hits, but they've not been able to trust it. They'll say, well, is it real? Is it me? How do I know that that's really happening? Is that something that I can believe in? And so I think one of the first...
So, Joan, who's the one that's asking those questions?
I think that's the insecure ego.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always saying, what's wrong with you?
Don't you dare trust that. Don't you dare trust that intuition. Because that intuition, for me, is the enemy. And it's connected to a higher source that I don't want you to be open to.
That's
is that right?
Right. Because then what would happen to me? I'd be diminished.
Yes.
And, oh my God,
yes.
Powerful role. People come in time and their critic is looming larger than anything, and their critic is really just a little minuscule part of themselves, but the critic has this voice of God, almost this commanding voice that says, you're doing this wrong, and what's wrong with you, and you can't get it right, and all of that stuff. And people start like, oh my God, what's going on? And so I said, why are we giving away our power to this part of ourselves that really is just screaming to be heard and just doing it at the top of its lungs because it thinks that it's going to be fierce when really it's concerned about its own life and its own extinction or presence.
Yeah, so I want to check this out. I don't know if you ignored my question or didn't hear my question, but earlier I was asking you, where do you feel that you're connected to me?
Well, I started to say I feel it internally, and I feel it because of that sense of knowing and that intuitive sense that I have, and that's why I was talking about that, because it's an understanding that we are connected. It's part of my belief system. So I feel it, I experience it in my emotions, I experience it in what I see as my intuitive truth, I experience it from the research that I've done, and I just, sometimes when we have intuitive abilities, there's one that's a sense of knowing that people say, well, how do you know that? And you can say, well, I don't know, I just know it. And so in terms of our connectedness, well, I just know it. And you could say, well, there's something wrong with just knowing it, Joanne. You can't just know it. You have to, well, but Steve, I know it.
Okay, which take us to a conversation that I wanted to have with you about you being an energy intuitive, because it's something that definitely jumped out for me in the list of expertise and wisdom that you have. So is that one of your favorite passions?
I have
being
so
an
many
energy.
passions, but that's
I know you do.
Pick one. We can go there. Yeah.
Is that okay? So what? Help us understand and define for us, from your point of view, what is an energy intuitive?
Okay, well, I do a lot with energy. I work with energy. I'm an energy master teacher. I've studied many different energy modalities. And from a very young age, I've been able to pick up the energy of other people. And initially, when I didn't understand it at a young age, and when I really didn't learn how to work with it or how to utilize it to my benefit and the benefit of others, I would pick up people's sadness, their emotions. I would pick up people's physical conditions. I would pick up all of what was going on within a person, from their energy field, their emotional field, their mental field, their physical field, and initially be bombarded with it. Over the years, since I've trained in it for many years, I've learned that information that I pick up, I can actually recognize that it's not, rather than take it on, I can recognize that it's not mine, and I can experience it and help people shift it because I'm aware of it. So I pick it up. Somebody can walk in and I'll say, how are you? And that person will say, oh, I'm fantastic. And I'll say, no, you're not. Well, uncomfortable that way, but I know that I can feel, or I can sense or intuit from their energy and from whatever else I'm picking up on all those different levels, that they may be grieving or they're angry or something else is going on. And I tell this story, Steve, because I do a lot of seminars, and in one very small, intimate group, the people in the group were shifting, and this one woman came and sat to my right. And I was talking, I was reading something to the group. I think it was just some beautiful lines of something that someone else had written. And suddenly I was not able to breathe, and I thought, what's going on here? This isn't me. And then I recognized that it really wasn't me at all, but I was experiencing those feelings, that feeling of not being able to breathe. And when the session ended, I went over to that person and I said, there's something going on with your breathing. And she said, oh, Joanne, I know. I almost wasn't able to come here tonight because my asthma was so bad. So I was intuiting that. I was picking that up from her energy field. Now, when I work with people, Steve, whether it's on a table doing energy work or any kind of work, I can actually pick up information from their energy, and that's why I call it the energy intuitive, because I'm able to read them, which enhances how I work with them and helps them sometimes understand about themselves. You'd be amazed at how many people don't understand who they are. So your first question is really very apt.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you come across with people that have become very good pretenders, where they seem to be really having their act together and they being very positive all the time?
Sure.
And do you see that, and do you feel that that's authentic, and do you call them on it?
I call people on a lot of things. So.
I had a feeling you would.
Yeah.
So what do you tell somebody who you always hear that they always doing fantastic, everything is wonderful, and nothing ever bad ever happens to them? They never have a bad day. They never have a challenge. You know, none of that ever happens. Everything is always good.
Well, it's interesting because oftentimes when I work with people in hypnosis or working at a deeper level, they can't fool themselves at that level so easily. So sometimes they may say, life is wonderful, I'm having the most wonderful experience 365 days for for all of my life, and then suddenly we'll work a little bit deeper and that person might be crying about something that happened, because like I said, you can't fool yourself all the time, and so that's there, and they're able to see it that way. What I love to do is allow people to really get their own sense of what's going on so that they feel empowered. So in that particular instance, it's like, well, see, you're on some level, you believe that things are okay, but here you are, you're grieving about something that happened, some loss that you had, and you buried it, and you've shoved it down in some way, but it's surfacing. I worked with someone years ago who had this incredible gift as an actress, but she was so terrified of it, Steve, that she just pushed that down, and she kept getting sick and saying, oh, I just don't know what's wrong with me or whatever. And I said, well, maybe it's important that we look at why you're not really allowing those fantastic talents that you have to be there and to surface and to share with other people. And maybe that's what's making you sick, because I think, again, getting back to that initial question, who are we if we ignore or deny our gifts and our talents and our truths, and we hide from them, or we stuff them down, or we are so fearful about them we don't let them shine. I think it affects us in a very great way, and she was evidencing that by getting sick. And the minute she was able to, even on a small scale, just bring that out, so that who she was, the life of her, the vibrancy was out there, she was getting better.
Great. So what I'm reading between the lines, actually, before I'm going to share what I'm reading between the lines, the announcement I have to make is Block TV is featuring us right now on the front page. So that means anybody that goes to Block TV, they get to see you and I. Isn't that great?
I love it. Thank you.
And hundreds of people are tuning in. We're at 300 right now and increasing. So here's what I want to experiment with for a second. So something that jumped out when I went to your website, your tagline is the heart of what matters most. Tell us more about that. What do you mean?
To the heart of what matters most. Well, the symbol is a heart, and the person who is actually this incredible designer, who's a good friend of mine, Lem Woodson, actually, when I was first interviewing with him for him to figure out, okay, what's going to be the symbol for her many years ago, he and I were talking, and he said so beautifully, he said, what happens is that you work with people and you connect with them at a very deep level, and sometimes people, like you and I were talking about, sometimes people lose their way. They get lost, terms of what their authenticity is or their own truth is or the core of who they are. And what you do is you sort of help bring them back to that source, to their own source. So the heart of it, the heart of who we are, the truth of who we are, the authentic aspect of who we are, which is, like I keep saying, our divinity, our vibrancy, our connection, our ability to be this incredible, miraculous person if we just allow it and recognize it and open up to it.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm sure that you have noticed, and I just want to make sure that all of our viewers are noticing as well, that we changed our name from Real Coaching Radio and TV Network. It's now our holding company, but the new name that we want to be known by is Conscious Evolution Media. And the Earth has been flat, it has been round, and now I changed it to a heart shape, and it's connected to what I was just asking you, because I have this intuitive sense that what's going to move us as humanity forward right now is getting connected to our hearts, connecting our hearts with our minds, and going through this unfolding of evolution. Because the way we look, you and I, as human beings, I don't think it's going to change. We're not going to have a sixth finger or anything like that. I think we're done in terms of going through evolution as we are shaped physically. But in terms of spiritually and being connected, because you said this earlier, that I have this tendency to have these long questions. So I'm going to interrupt myself.
I want to respond a little bit to that heart, because I think it's
Please do.
True. And I think that, well, I'm actually taping for NBC News tomorrow. We're taping that whole heart-mind connection, and I'll just tell you a little story about that. When we presented it to NBC, and it's NBC Philadelphia, and I was asked to send in a lot of research corroborating what I wanted to talk about, and basically what I wanted to talk about, and it's not my necessarily new idea, it's evolving in all of us, like you said, Steve, and we're all intuiting it and picking it up, and it's spreading, is that connection, that heart connection that we have. And when our hearts are open, and when our hearts are vibrating at this particular resonance, firstly, we can affect other people beautifully. We can affect our emotions, we can affect our brains, we can affect our health, and we can influence what's going on. So I think that, yes, that's part of us, as you say, and I believe so wholeheartedly, is the part of us that is expanding and is what is bringing us into this conscious evolution, this remembering, this connection from heart to heart and heart to mind, because I think that's so vital now. And that is the changer. That is what's going to happen. And by the way, what if we do have another finger? I mean, as we evolve, I still think that there...
Yeah, I'm open. If we're supposed to have another finger, let's be it. But here's the thing. So I owe you giving you some credit. So some time ago we had a conversation, and as I was redesigning our network and created all these TV channels that we have, you have provided some positive feedback for me regarding the self-growth industry. And that's really a beat-up word that...
activities with this, by actually focusing on your heart center, which is not necessarily your heart, physical heart, but more in the center of your chest. When you focus on your heart center, and when you allow yourself to feel that the energy and the breath and everything coming from your heart center, and you quiet your mind, that overactive mind, and you get to that place, what happens is that the heart, the resonance, the vibration of the heart begins to shift. And there are people that are calling it coherence. It's called heart coherence. And what happens is that that ability, that coherence begins to change everything within us. It changes, it affects our mental state. So when we're in that place, we're thinking more clearly. When we're in that place, our intuition is greater and higher. When we're in that place, we probably can connect better to other people. We're also connecting more to a place of health and wellness. And we're feeling better. We're connecting better to people. There was a gentleman at the University of Pennsylvania who did some research with gratitude, okay? And he was a professor, and what he decided was that he was asking his students and many other people what would happen. The question was, what's going to happen if people are practicing gratitude, being grateful for the day? And it sounds superficial, but it really isn't. So after a period of time, they actually divided into a control group and whatever. They discovered that the people, and this is just one study, but there have been many studies, Steve, that the people who were being more grateful and practicing gratitude and making it a practice, like some people meditate, I do, but so making it a consistent practice, those people reported that they were feeling happier, that their relationships with their significant others and their friends were better, that overall anything that bothered them in the past seemed to be less bothersome. So they made a shift in their perception as well as in their behavior. So I think the heart is a powerful place, and I think that research suggests that there's so much, the heart's frequency is very incredible, and the heart's ability to make shifts and changes consciously and even unconsciously is just, I mean, they're doing more and more research. I started to look at this because I was doing that book on joy, that ebook on joy, and I started to read about heart transplant patients, and I started to get like really excited because what I discovered was that people who had a heart from somebody else. Now, usually the heart has a brain. We never knew that before, but the heart has a brain, and the heart actually can resonate at a greater level than
our real brain.
Actual brain, right?
Yeah.
So the heart can think, and the heart can feel. So thinking and feeling in one area is pretty amazing. So heart transplant patients, once they got this new heart, they were able to have different feelings, they had different dreams, they had different sensations, they had different likes, they became new in some way. I mean, they had the same brain, the same body, but the heart started to dictate other things about them than before. And I just thought, that's so fascinating.
Wow. So I know I've said this before, and then I went into a long question, so I'm not going to do that this time. What I'm picking up between the lines, and this is something I've kind of learned throughout the years, is that I pick up stuff by connecting with you.
Right.
What you're not really saying between what you're saying. Isn't that weird?
I totally think so. Yeah, but then yes. So go ahead.
Okay, so what I'm getting, and this is, I think it's pretty revolutionary, but maybe not, is that human beings require self-management, and if we don't acknowledge that, then the ego says, "Oh, don't worry, I'll take care of it."
Bird, right? I think self-management is key.
Yes, I knew you would. So how do people this is what gets interesting when I do these shows, is that I usually have guests that are very intelligent, very smart, full of wisdom, they went through a lot of the stuff I went through. We are very similar in many ways, and many ways we're not. But what's interesting, it's like when you would get, several gurus in a room, there may not be a lot of conversation because they don't have anything to disagree about. They would just sit there and just be in each other's energy and generate love for each other and for themselves.
So
there's really not a whole lot to be said. Now, I can't do that because then we would have radio and TV shows that would be full of silence. So I got to somehow get around that. So I am. So how does somebody get to the point where they could say, oh, I get it. So who is the one that's supposed to managing whom?
Well, we're breaking ourselves up into these little pieces, but that's okay. We have to give those aspects names and clarifications, which sometimes then you lose it all, but we'll do it anyway. So when I work with people, I often call that part of ourselves our higher self. And somebody will say, well, who is that? What is that? Okay, and so the definition of the higher self, firstly, is that the higher self is within us. So our higher self is that part of us, and this is what I say to a lot of my clients that I coach and that I do energy work with. It's that part of us that knows us past and future. So it's that part of us that knows us, loves us unconditionally, but is there to guide us throughout our life and our soul path. I think that's very important, and help us get to really bring out our core and help us recognize our innermost truths, which embraces not only the external aspects, but also the inner truths, the expression, the divinity, not only the feelings or the ego, but something more. And I think that's if we allow it, because not everybody allows it. Oftentimes the ego, again, we're giving names to things. Oftentimes the ego is the one that leads us down the road, and the ego can want a lot. It's almost like the ego wants a lot from us, and sometimes doesn't have that unconditional love that the higher self has within us. And I think if we look at it that way, firstly, we can be more gentle with ourselves, because many of us are very hard on ourselves. And if we recognize that internal love that we can have for ourselves is there, it's kind of inbred in us, it's something that we have at birth. We just need to be able to let that part of ourselves lead and access it. I think we'd be stronger, we'd be happier. And again, getting back to what I said earlier, we'd be connecting with each other in a much more peaceful, happier vein than many of us are now.
Can we say, or would it be crazy to say, that the ego is like artificial intelligence?
Well, that's interesting. I like that idea.
It's like we taught it a lot of things, not necessarily everything that we thought it was true. We gave it a lot of information and data, and now it's sophisticated enough where it wants to be in control, and it doesn't want to be in danger. It doesn't want us to be in danger. It's like it's recognizing that, hey, there's a whole lot of stuff to watch out for. And since I have all this information in my memory and in my mind, I think I better take care of you. Better take care of your body, your mind, and your spirit, because I know, and you don't.
I think it's true. I also divide it up even more than that, and I'll say that there's a part of us that's part of that ego, that's that critic that you're talking about, and that initially it served us. So we learned that we weren't supposed to go near the fire because we get burned. So the ego would say, "Oh, don't touch that stove because it's too hot," or we would be commanded inside of our heads not to cross the street when there was traffic. So wait, don't do that. Car's coming. So we learn to and you said that beautifully, Steve. It's a protective measure, but that's one piece of what the ego does. And so that part got really overconfident, really full of itself, and took over. And that's the part that often beats us down and says, "You're not doing that right. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you doing that? What?" And that's the part that has that horrific, sometimes angry voice that we always have to prove something to. And then there's the other aspect of the ego, which doesn't recognize our flaws. Even though we're divine and perfect in so many ways, we still have to be able to evolve and expand, and there are aspects of us that need to change and need to go through some transformation to get there. So yeah, I like that artificial. That's a long way of saying.
So you have similar traits than I have. I can go on with a sentence for 10 minutes or a question, and then people wondering, okay, so what's the question? Because I asked the question and also answered it in the same sentence. All right, so we have some interesting comments, a couple of them from, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, Pomegranate. I could be completely messing that up. So here's the couple of comments. I don't think it's that much of a positive thing to inherit character traits from another person by organ donation.
I'm not giving it a positive or a negative. I'm just stating that happens. I think that people have, I have my own heart, so I don't know what it feels like to have somebody else's. And I think on some level it might be very confusing, and oftentimes depending upon whose heart you have. And if it was the heart of somebody that was going out and murdering people, I certainly wouldn't want that in my body. But again, I'm not saying that it's good or bad. I'm just saying that it can create a powerful shift within the person. What I am saying, though, is that our hearts are incredible, powerful places, and more powerful than the brain. The magnification of the heart is thousands of times greater than that of the brain, so it has more outreach, it has more, it can affect more than the brain can. And we never knew that before. We're learning that because there are scientists and people who doing studies that are recognizing this and giving that information. And one of the ways they've learned that is through heart transplantation. So that's how they began to say, oh my goodness, it's not just a heart, physical heart. It thinks, feels, it has emotions, it even has serotonin in it. There are so many things that are going on that are exploring. I think this is a whole new field, not only of science, but also of spirituality, as Steve and I were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. So I know that that certainly is true for me, and I'm sure it is true for you, and for many people, that what we have been taught to think is that humanity organizes itself to a certain architecture, which is a top-down architecture. That there's always somebody at the top in any organization, in any business, in any political entity, in any country, in anything that we do as human beings. Everything is organized in top-down architecture. So there's always a CEO, a president, and there's senior management, and there's middle management, and there's the workers. And I'm coming to an understanding that really doesn't serve us anymore. It served us until now, but I don't think it's an architecture that we want to continue to use in the future as we go through evolution. And what I'm suggesting is an architecture where everything is connected to everything, and everybody is connected to everybody. So it's a more holistic. It's like a holarchy. Have you ever seen one of those pictures where it's like a globe and everything is connected to everything?
Talking about a hologram?
It's not like a hologram. It's like, are you familiar with?
Talking about that? Yes.
Are you familiar with the flower of life?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so if you take the flower of life and put it into a globe, everything is connected to everything.
I believe that. I think it's true. And I was reading a book. It sounds like it's going to be off subject, but nothing's off subject. So I was reading a book, and it happened to be fiction, but one of the people in the book actually went and studied wolves, and I started to learn about the wolf and about how we perceive the wolf, and I'm talking about this because right now there's been so much about killing wolves in certain parts of the United States. We're not recognizing how important one species is to the totality of all of us, and so when we do away or are allowing extinction in one area, the wolf serves us in many, many ways that many people don't even recognize. So as you're talking about that holistic sense, the cooperation, the necessity for all of us, whether it's humanity, to recognize that about nature and to recognize about the interconnectedness between us and animals, it's just and one another is really very important, I believe, to our continued existence.
Yeah, so I agree. Somebody asked me the other day in one of the chat rooms, did I think or do I feel that animals are more conscious than humans? And I had to pause to think about that for a second, but then I thought of my cat, and I can tell you that, again, it's in my opinion, my cat is more conscious and awake than I am. Because she does not care about the past, nor she cares about the future. She only cares about pet me right now.
I had too, a female cat, and I think it's incredible. Not only that, cats let you know when they're in a state of ecstasy, in a state of joy. They can purr constantly. And what a way. Could you imagine if we're walking around purring all the time? Very much part cat sometimes, so. But I think that we need to, like you said, I think we need to recognize that interconnectedness. I think it's very important, and it's why a lot of things are shifting right now, because we haven't given that belief system the credence and the credibility and the awareness that's necessary to keep our earth thriving. I mean, people don't even recognize many people don't, I won't say everybody, but a lot of people don't recognize the living, breathing earth as this incredible alive being that we've poured oil on and dug into and done all sorts of things without really acknowledging how wonderful she is to allow us to do all this. And sometimes the earth fights back. Enough.
Yes. Yeah. So I think I can comfortably say that, there is a matrix on this planet, and a lot of people are in the matrix, meaning they get up in the morning, they go through the same stuff every morning. They go to the bathroom, brush their teeth, get dressed, bite something for breakfast, get into their car, go to the office, go through what they go through in the office, keep watching the clock, on the wall, is it 5 o'clock yet? Is it 5 o'clock yet? Makes a long day, but they keep asking, is it how much longer before it's 5 o'clock so I can leave? Then they go into their car, they go home. This is just a short version. They go eat something for dinner, and they sit in front of the TV for a few hours. They go to bed, and the next day, they repeat the same thing, with some minor variations that the Matrix allows for. How many people do you think are in that thing?
I don't know numbers, but I would say a lot. It's like being in that drone state and not really being, some of it's mechanical and not really being present. And maybe if we were present to that and aware of that, and sometimes it's just like, okay, take a new route home from work, or think about doing something different on your job, or something different in your life. Shift things up a little bit just to get the juices flowing in a new direction could be very incredible. I think life is a gift, Steve, and I think it's so important to recognize that. I don't know how long we're here. You know, we may actually be beyond forever in terms of how we are in this new evolutionary process that we are in. Who knows? But as long as we're here, to be able to experience and feel the vibrancy of what life has to offer, and that doesn't mean to go out there crazy, but it means to, like you said, be very much in the present and allow the moments. Like I have something in one of my books, Sense Your Way to Life Satisfaction, where I talk about each moment. That moment will never be there again. So to this moment when you and I are talking, we may never have this experience again. And so it's about being here and acknowledging it and embracing it and giving it our all, because the next moment is the next moment.
and then I want to add, yes, and then whatever it is that you and I are experiencing right now, it's the way it is, and it's the way it's supposed to be. If it was supposed to be any other way, it would be, but it isn't.
I totally.
Because
it makes sense.
Because what we end up doing as human beings is constantly wishing for things to be different. Well, oh my goodness, you can't wish things into be different. They are the way they are.
So
how about just accepting that this is the way it is, and now what?
And here we are. I love it. I think it makes sense, and I think if we're doing that, then we wouldn't waste time thinking, oh, what's going on? How come I didn't do this in this moment, and why did I do this over, and how can I correct it? And, well, you know, you can't go back and correct that last moment. It's bye. It's gone.
It's gone. Yeah.
Great that you have that moment, because so many people don't.
Yeah. So it is that wonderful time of the hour where you get to share your website and anything else you would like to share with the viewers.
Oh, great. Well, firstly, I want to thank you, because this has been fun. And initially I thought, what are we going to talk about? I was trying to steer you into some way of, can I give you some ideas about what I want? So anyway, but thank you, because this is much more spontaneous and exhilarating than having to follow some path. We just allowed it to be. So
you just wanted to be in control, Joanne.
No, I know.
And I said, no, I'm the host, and I'm going to be in control. And the way I'm going to be in control is that I'm going to let it go and let it be free and let it take us wherever the conversation wants to go.
And it works. It's beautiful. So thank you. Yes,
thank
my
you.
website. It's Dr. Joanne, Joanne, JoanneWhite.com, or doc, DOC, and on it I have information about my coaching, my energy work, many books, Mastering the Art of Success, Sense Your Way to Life Satisfaction, which I just talked about, that Joy ebook, which talks about the heart and gratitude. And a lot of my books and a lot of what I do gives people experiential activities, because I think it's not enough to just say things. You have to give people activities so that they can experience it for themselves. And all of those activities that I have, I've actually tried on myself. So I've always used me as the guinea pig, and they work. And so go to my website, check me out, and I also do a lot with soul readings and soul connections and soul healings, and that can be done through Skype and on the telephone. And like I said to Steve earlier, I love being able to help people, and that's what I've been doing for years. And so I can do that through an intuitive way, through an energetic way, through coaching, through the airwaves, because we can still connect, as Steve and I have been talking about. So that's DocWhite.org, and check out some of my books. And I also have a relaxation CD called Restore, and it's MP3, so you can download it too. And there's a lot of products there, and I'm getting ready to do a lot of interesting stuff, so stay tuned. And reach me. My phone number is 877-DOC, D-O-C-W-H-I-T-E. Now, Steve, some people will say, wait a minute, that's too many numbers, that's too many letters, but it works, because it just works. So you don't have to do the last one.
Okay.
Me.
Okay, great. All right, so before we end the show, I want to do something that's like totally outside the box, because that's what I like to do. All right, so what's coming to me right now is I am no longer satisfied by just having people come to our show and watch and view our show whom are already awake and conscious, because that's easy. This conversation is easy for people to listen to and watch who's already on the same path we're on. I don't consider that a huge accomplishment. So I'm interested in reaching the people whom maybe not awake or on the fence, which is probably the next level of the population that I'm interested in having to listen to what we have to say and engage them and provide some education. But I'm curious, how would you interrupt people? And we've been touching on this on the show several times, that people their egos are engaged and they have all these conversations going. They already know what they're going to do next. They know what they're going to do this afternoon. They have all this stuff worked out, constant conversation in the head, and they completely miss what's going on in the present moment. Can you think of anything right now in this moment that would interrupt people?
Yeah.
In that way of being, besides the 2x4?
Well, it's something that I actually do in my coaching. When people come and that critic is screaming at them and not allowing them to just be in the moment, I say, and I do this to myself sometimes, I will actually scream, all right, ready? Hold your ears, Steve. Stop! And my brain that's trying to trick me or put me, it just kind of stops for a minute. My cat runs away, but it has the ability to stop that stuff in my head. Now, I've revised it for other people, so oftentimes for people who are more visual, I'll say, well, imagine a stop sign. So see that stop sign when you're rambling, or when that ego is taking you off course, or when you're just not really coming to your truth, and there's a part of you that's aware of it, that knows it. So see that stop sign and allow that stop sign, or that